A single drop of blood. That was the tiny spark that ignited a $9 billion empire, only to leave the entire tech world in absolute darkness. But hold on, buried somewhere inside this multi-billion-dollar medical fraud is a critical investing rule and a psychological lesson that will protect your own startup and your money from toxic leaders. We have hidden this massive value drop inside this video. It could hit in the next 60 seconds. It could surprise you right in the middle or near the very end. Watch the full breakdown to catch it, because once you know this secret, nobody will ever scam you again. In 2014, Silicon Valley was looking for a miracle. A 19-year-old Stanford dropout stepped onto the stage with a promise that sounded like science fiction. Investors were tired of social media apps. They wanted something that could change human biology. And right at that moment, a 19-year-old Stanford dropout stepped onto the stage with a promise that sounded like pure science fiction. Her name was Elizabeth Holmes, and her company, Theranos, claimed it could reveal your deepest health secrets with just one tiny prick. No heavy hospital machinery, no long waiting lines. It was fast, it was accessible, and it was about to change healthcare forever, or at least that's what she wanted the world to believe. You see, Elizabeth didn't just look the part. She engineered an entire corporate personality. She spoke in an unusually deep, calculated voice.
I believe the individual is the answer to the challenges of healthcare.
To command respect in boardrooms full of men, she wore the iconic black turtleneck, mimicking Steve Jobs, and she famously rarely blinked during interviews. The tech industry fell under a complete hypnotic spell. Billionaire investors weren't just buying into a medical concept anymore. They were investing in a modern myth. They genuinely believed they were witnessing the birth of the female Steve Jobs. But the most unusual part of this multi-billion-dollar narrative wasn't the technology itself. It was the people protecting it. Elizabeth Holmes didn't gather medical experts or biotech doctors around her. Instead, she surrounded her board with powerful military generals and famous politicians. These were men who controlled entire nations, yet they knew absolutely nothing about healthcare or blood testing. Why were they there? Simple. They became her ultimate human shield against the outside world, blinding anyone who dared to ask questions. With such legendary names backing the illusion, the money flooded in like a tidal wave. Hundreds of millions of dollars were poured into Theranos' accounts, valuing the company at $9 billion and making Elizabeth the youngest self-made female billionaire alive. But behind the polished glass walls of the headquarters, there was a strict, military-like paranoia. Laboratories were hidden behind security scanners. Nobody was allowed to know what the other department was doing. Because if anyone asked how the black box actually worked, the terrifying truth would destroy the entire empire. To the public, Theranos was a sanctuary of medical innovation. But to the engineers inside, it was a high-tech prison where the truth was locked behind biometric scanners. Elizabeth Holmes claimed her mini-lab, the Edison, could perform over 200 medical tests, from cholesterol to glucose, and even complex cancer detection. It was supposed to be the ultimate medical revolution, replacing massive commercial laboratories with a sleek box no bigger than a computer tower. But behind closed doors, the Edison was an absolute disaster. The internal mechanics were so unstable that parts would literally fly off during operations. Centrifuges exploded inside the machine, spilling toxic blood samples everywhere and creating a biohazard nightmare for the staff. With multi-million-dollar retail contracts already signed, Elizabeth Holmes faced a deadly dilemma. Her machine didn't work, and the launch date was days away. So she did something strictly illegal. She secretly bought massive, heavy-duty commercial laboratory equipment from their direct competitor, Siemens. Her engineers modified these massive competitor machines to process the lab results in secret. When investors or health inspectors came for a tour, they were shown the tiny Edison box. But the moment they left, the blood samples were rushed downstairs to be analyzed by the Siemens machines. The entire technology was a ghost. But hacking the competitors' machines triggered a catastrophic scientific flaw. A single drop of blood collected from a finger prick simply does not have enough volume to run on a massive industrial Siemens analyzer. The commercial machines needed hundreds of times more fluid to function. To bypass this, Elizabeth Holmes ordered her lab technicians to do something unforgivable. They diluted the patient's blood samples with water. By diluting the blood, they altered the chemical composition of the tests, turning real medical data into complete randomized guesswork. This wasn't just a white-collar corporate lie. Real American citizens were receiving these corrupted results. Healthy patients were falsely diagnosed with aggressive prostate cancer, while pregnant women were told they were having miscarriages when their babies were perfectly fine. Theranos was playing Russian roulette with human lives. The internal data was an absolute nightmare, and the scientists knew it. The corporate wall of silence was beginning to suffocate the employees. But Elizabeth Holmes had a terrifying legal army ready to destroy anyone who dared to speak out. Little did she know, her greatest threat wasn't an outside investigator. It was a 22-year-old insider who happened to be family. Inside Theranos, Elizabeth Holmes wasn't just fighting bad science. She was running a multi-million-dollar corporate espionage operation against her own employees. As the fake medical numbers grew worse, the paranoia inside the headquarters reached a tipping point. Elizabeth hired elite private investigators and aggressive corporate attorneys to monitor every email, text message, and conversation. The laboratory became a psychological prison where asking a single question meant risking your career. Every single employee was forced to sign ultra-aggressive, non-disclosure agreements. If you resigned, armed security guards escorted you out of the building, and legal letters arrived at your family's home the next morning. Elizabeth had built an impenetrable fortress of fear, but she forgot one dangerous variable. The truth always leaks from the inside. In 2014, a 22-year-old lab technician named Tyler Schultz noticed that the Edison machines were failing every single quality control test. But Tyler wasn't just a regular employee. He was the grandson of George Shultz, a legendary U.S. Secretary of State who sat right on the board of directors protecting Elizabeth Holmes. When Tyler tried to warn his grandfather about the medical fraud, the old statesman refused to believe him, choosing Elizabeth's myth over his own blood. Realizing the powerful shield protecting the lie, Tyler made a dangerous choice. He created a fake email address, risked a multi-million-dollar lawsuit, and contacted the press. On the other side of the country, John Carreyrou, a Pulitzer Prize-winning investigative journalist, received a mysterious anonymous tip. The tip claimed that America's hottest medical startup, valued at $9 billion, was actively endangering public health with completely fabricated lab data. Carreyrou began a secret underground investigation, interviewing former employees in dark parking lots and hidden cafes. Elizabeth Holmes quickly found out and unleashed her terrifying legal army, threatening to bankrupt the newspaper and ruin the journalist's life. It was a race against time between a billion-dollar illusion and a single printed headline. Despite the extreme legal threats, the wall of silence began to crumble from within. Tyler Schultz and a brave young scientist named Erica Chung refused to be silenced. They knew that every single day, the deception continued. Thousands of real patients were receiving randomized, corrupted medical diagnoses that could literally kill them. The investigative file was complete. The evidence of the fake Siemens machines and the diluted blood samples was locked in a secure vault. Elizabeth Holmes felt untouchable behind her military generals and billionaire backers. But she didn't know that the printing presses were already rolling, and the headline that was about to hit the world next morning would obliterate her entire empire forever. On October 15, 2015, Elizabeth Holmes woke up as a tech goddess. By noon, she was the face of the biggest corporate fraud since Enron. John Carreyrou's front-page expose hit the world like an atomic bomb. The headline exposed every dark secret we've discussed: the broken Edison boxes, the hidden Siemens machines, and the diluted blood of real American patients. In a matter of hours, The multi-billion-dollar illusion, built by military generals and politicians, completely shattered. Elizabeth didn't back down immediately. She went on national television, deeply defensive, famously stating, "This is what happens when you work to change things. First they think you're crazy, then they fight you, and then all of a sudden you change the world." But this time, the hypnotic spell was broken. The federal investigators were already marching toward her doors. What happens when a $9 billion company is exposed as a ghost? The financial collapse was terrifyingly fast. Medical regulators banned Theranos from operating laboratories. Major pharmacy chains canceled their contracts overnight and sued the startup for breach of contract. In less than a year, the company's valuation dropped from $9 billion to exactly zero. The youngest self-made female billionaire in the world lost her entire fortune in months. The expensive corporate fortress in Silicon Valley was liquidated, and the high-tech black boxes were sold as scrap metal. But bankruptcy was just the beginning of Elizabeth's punishment. The U.S. Department of Justice was preparing criminal charges. In 2022, Elizabeth Holmes stood inside a federal courtroom, facing multiple counts of wire fraud and conspiracy. The powerful politicians who once protected her as a human shield were nowhere to be found. For the first time in her life, her deep voice and her black turtleneck couldn't save her from reality. The jury found her guilty of deceiving investors and endangering public health. A federal judge sentenced Elizabeth Holmes to 11 years and 3 months in prison. The woman who promised to change human history with a single drop of blood was officially assigned a federal inmate number, trading her iconic black clothes for a prison uniform. The downfall of Theranos is more than just a story about a brilliant con artist. It is the ultimate warning sign for modern culture. It exposed the toxic dark side of Silicon Valley's favorite motto, "Fake it until you make it," a philosophy that works perfectly fine for building social media apps or video games, but a philosophy that becomes lethal when you apply it to human lives. Elizabeth Holmes chased infinite power and wealth by selling an impossible miracle. In the end, she left behind an empty corporate empire, ruined families, and a dark shadow over the future of medical technology, proving once and for all that the most dangerous lies are always hidden behind a beautiful illusion. This was the downfall of Theranos. The ultimate lesson of Theranos isn't just that a brilliant con artist fell from grace. It is a harsh wake-up call for modern innovation. In the tech world, we are told to push boundaries, to disrupt markets, and to market a vision before the product is even ready. But Elizabeth Holmes proved that there is a line that should never be crossed. Innovation without empathy is just vanity. When you manipulate data, silence critics, and trade human safety for a higher corporate valuation, you aren't changing the world. You are destroying it. True disruption requires absolute transparency, because a legacy built on a beautiful illusion will always end up in total ruin. Thank you for watching The Downfall. If you want to analyze the strategic failures behind the world's biggest empires, subscribe and hit the notification bell. We publish new files every single week. Share this with your friends, and we'll see you in the next case.